So how do we determine what is a weed and what is a flower? Okay. The age-old question. So ultimately, a weed is just a flower in the wrong place. And this is why it makes it so difficult to say what is a weed and what is a flower, or something that you would want to keep. And the reason is because everybody is different. Okay. So some people would get really pissed off with the amount of these that are around their garden. I love them because I use them in arrangements. I think they're really beautiful. The wildlife love them. But if either you didn't know what they were, or you were just getting annoyed at the sheer volume of them, you'd probably pull them out because you just think, well, they're just getting in the way. The same as these breezer. These are seeds I bought. These are from seeds I bought that I sowed in my borders, and then they have self-sown all through my gravel paths. So I think it's important to say that there's a bit of a mindset shift needed here, that, you know, just because something is not where you planted it or not in the right place doesn't necessarily mean it's a weed. It doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna, you know, hurt your other plants. It could just be something that's been dropped by a bird, for example, as it's flown over your garden. So, and quite honestly, I'm really pleased that I never have to bother sowing any of these seeds every year because my garden just does it for me. It saves me loads of time. So by relaxing your attitude to having weeds in your garden, the biodiversity will thrive. You know, Mother Nature is trying to help you out, but also she's trying to, you know, increase the biodiversity and the range of plants in your garden by weeds, by seeds blowing into the garden or being dropped by animals. So by doing that, the biodiversity will thrive. You'll have more insects in your garden. Your garden will be healthier and start to develop its own ecosystem. And it will start to kind of work and look after itself. Not entirely, there definitely will still be some things for you to do. But for example, if you can increase the insect life in your garden, some of the insects, ladybirds, for example, will eat the aphid. Their larvae will eat the aphids that appear on your plants, that will absolutely appear on your plants, because that is just what happens. But instead of you having to spend time spraying your plants, squishing the aphids, if you've got loads of ladybirds already living in your garden, they're going to come in and have a good old munch. So try allowing some of those weeds to kind of stay around and see what happens. Having said that, there are a few weeds that I would advise for you to remove as quickly as quickly as possible, because they can spread. Now, and they can actually end up strangling your flowers. And you obviously, if you're growing for flowers, that's what you want. So some examples of these are, I've got a picture on the next slide. Creeping thistle. Now, these are just about to pop here. These little bits, these little balls that you can see are just about to burst open into purple flowers. But the bees absolutely love them. So from biodiversity point of view, they're great. But the way they grow is that they have an underground root that goes along, and then they have plants that come up and poke their head out the soil here, and then they carry on growing underground, and then another bit pops up. So what happens is when you try and dig them up, they snap off, and that underground bit is still there and alive, and will just send up another shoot. So they are really difficult. If they really get engrossed in your border, it is hard to get rid of them. I think it's important to point out that I actually have all three of these in my garden. Having had certainly Alora last year, my littlest, I have had less time, had hardly any time to weed last year. So they have kind of got on hold again a bit. So it is a bit of an ongoing battle with these, which is frustrating, but it is what it is. The middle picture then is bindweed. So you can see here there's a foxglove growing across the screen horizontally. And can you see the thing that is wrapped all the way around it with the green leaves at the top? And you can actually see the tip of it poking off the end of the foxglove. That is bindweed, and it literally strangles your plants. It grows round and round and round and round and round them and uses them almost like something to grow up. Then it will flower, and in doing so, it just completely knackers your plants. Not such a problem on foxgloves because obviously they're biennial. So that plant would die after it had flowered anyway. But yeah, for some of your perennials, you really don't want the bindweed getting around them because it will just absolutely strangle them. And then the third one then is creeping buttercup. Now, I never had this in my garden until I think last year. And one plant must have found its way in a seed, whether that was from a bird, whether that was wind pollinated on someone's shoe, how do you know? But unfortunately, it has started to spread through my borders because I just did not keep on top of it. So it's a bit more of a job now to try and dig it out. Again, it's not the end of the world. And of the three, it's probably the easiest one to get rid of because its roots are relatively shallow. Because bindweed grows in a very similar way to creeping thistle with these underground roots that snap off really, really easily. So yeah, so the buttercup one is not the end of the world, but it will spread like mad if you let it. And if you want space to grow some of your own nice plants, then it's better if you can hoik it out while you still can. So perennial versus annual weeds. I'm just going to take a little sip. Please let me know if there's any questions in the chat, by the way. No questions? Okie dokie. Okay, so perennial versus annual weeds. So perennial weeds tend to have long roots known as tap roots. Now I tried to dig some up to show you. So this here, again, I think I'm going to stop my share so you can see. This here is a taproot. Can you see this long root that's coming down? Okay. And you can actually see if I turn it on the end here, can you see how there's a bit of white around there? That shows me that I've actually snapped the taproot off. It's almost like the plant's blood. Okay. It shows me that I snapped the taproot off. So actually the taproot would be much longer. And when I was digging, I didn't really get down far enough because the ground is so hard, and I've managed to snap it off. But can you see what it does? It's got this long thick root that comes down the middle, and then it sends off lots of little offshoots there, like any root would, but they're very thick and they're very brittle, which is the way that the plant grows. So when you dig, they snap, the taproot stays in the ground and it can regrow again. Okay, so that is a bit of a pain in the arse, actually, in all honesty, because it makes it really hard to dig them up. Yeah, so I've said here, they're often wind pollinated and some spread underground via their roots too. So things like dandelions, they are tap-rooted perennial weeds. Obviously, they're wind pollinated. Those seeds make the little dandelion clocks, and then you blow them and then they just go everywhere, and then you get loads more of them. If you can get dandelions while they're small, they'll come out so much easier. But if you let them get big, they're really difficult to get out. Some other examples are brambles, dandelions, I've said that, creeping thistle, which we've spoken about, stinging nettles as well, actually. They spread underground via the roots. So when you dig up a stinging nettle, make sure you get all the root out if you can. The creeping buttercup, and then bindweed and couch grass. So they are all really difficult to get rid of. Annual weeds then tend to be slightly smaller and wind deposited. So if I show you the roots here on this one, let me just get some of the soil off because there's loads of soil in it. Can you see how much how different the shape of the root system looks here? It's not just one big root with lots coming off sideways, it's almost got lots of little ones coming off. So that makes it easier to just almost pull out of the ground, especially imagine if this was a bit smaller and I hadn't let it get quite so big. It would be more a little bit like the one that we hoed off. So hoeing is really good for annual weeds. So if I hoed this when it was smaller, it probably would have just had one tiny little thing like that one, and I could have chopped it off and it would have just died. Whereas I've let it get quite big. Not the end of the world, but it was growing in a pot next to a plant that I want to do well. So this is just stealing some of the other plants' energy, some of the water, the nutrients, and the sunlight. So it's better for me to hoik it out and get rid. Got mud all over my laptop now. Sorry, laptop. So hopefully that shows you the slight difference between the two types. Okay. So a little tip here for when you are weeding is it's easier to remove the entire root of certainly of these, or either really, when the soil is damp. When it's really hard and dry like it is at the minute, it just bakes around and it's really, really hard, and these will probably snap off and then they can regrow. So if you can, either wait until you've watered that particular border, and then maybe the next day do your weeding then, or wait until it's rained.